All right. We got some graphic novels we're going to talk about today. I'm Adam, and joining me today is Andy Mascola once again. And I don't know if it panned to you, but it will in a minute. But we're going to talk about some books. We're going to start off with Adrian Tomine's "The Loneliness of the Long Distance Cartoonist," which I just read on Andy's recommendation because he knows Adrian Tomine. Why don't we begin by Andy? Why don't you tell us like how you started with Adrian Tomine's work and what do you think
Oh,
of it in this book? Go ahead.
yeah. The earliest memory I have of Adrian Tomine's work. I don't know if it's weird because you're saying Tomine and I'm saying Tomine. And in the book that you're holding up, I think every time his name is pronounced, he spells it out phonetically, and it's always pronounced differently by somebody else. So I
Well,
don't know if they're always right or they're always wrong.
he says he's Japanese American, so Japanese it would be Tomine, and uh, I don't
Tomine,
Tomine, yeah.
right
So
on.
if
So I was going to
you
say the earliest memory that I have had of Adrian Tomine's work was from the New Yorker covers, and also he did some work for like indie bands. Like I think he did a Softies, an album cover for this Washington band called the Softies, and he also did a poster, I believe, for Weezer. And I was like, this art, I recognize he's got a very distinctive style. And I said, who is this person? So I began to research him. And when I figured out it was this guy who was doing this comic book, Optic Nerve, and had been doing it for a while, I thought, like, oh, I need to look into that. And then I think I found Summer Blonde. That was one of his collections. And I really enjoyed that. And then I just stayed on top of his work from there. And I'm still a fan. I still like what he does. And I'm glad that you picked it up. What did you think of this latest work of his?
well, I was trying to remember if I have read anything by him before, and it's possible that I did read one of his short story collections, but it's been at least five years. I'm guessing if I have, and I'm not even 100% sure. But for this book, which is pretty much a summary of his his cartooning life, right? It's done in a interesting. We talked a little about his drawing style beforehand. That it's simpler in a lot of ways than some of his work, some of his older work, which looks a little more like Dan Clowes. Um, and also, this is done on this kind of graph paper. What are these called? Like moleskine. Uh,
Yeah, like a moleskin notebook or something. Yeah.
yeah, and so the story, I thought it's kind of really kind of dark, not dark, but like I could almost see like this ending with him deciding to give up comics because it just seems like it's just one bitter like spiral down through all these embarrassing things that happened to him. And I like the humor though; it was very funny, and I laughed out loud in quite a few parts. But I think he talks a little about the criticism of some of his work that it is kind of like kind of some indie comics, self autobiographical stuff, which can kind of fall into certain kind of cliches. But when he breaks out of that, I feel like he does pretty great stuff. And I liked his storytelling style, and it kept me reading. Yeah, it was very interesting. What did you think of this latest one?
I thought it was okay. I tell you, unlike you, I didn't find the humor that laugh out loud. I thought it was okay. It's obviously very self-deprecating. And at first I thought, oh, this is kind of cute. He's obviously being very self-deprecating. But then it doesn't stop. It keeps going with the self-deprecation. And one difference I noticed is for Optic Nerve and the stories that he did were more like little indie films, and the humor was dark, as you described. I think it's definitely dark. Some are very dark, but he didn't put himself in there. He used characters instead. It wasn't like a self-referential the way the loneliness of the long distance cartoonist is in the Optic Nerve stories. And I thought they worked a little bit better. I understood where he's going for. It's sort of like it's a memoir essentially,
Right.
or just a collection of anecdotes. And I, again, like you, I love his art style, but unlike you, I don't think I liked his humor. But I think a lot of things have changed since the last time I read him. I discovered Simon Hanselman. And when I read Simon Hanselman, I laughed out. Like I literally had tears in my eyes. Like I had to put the book down, you know? And then more recently, another book that we're going to talk about today, the Nathan Cowdry book. I was like, holy crap. Some of the humor was just so funny, you know?
Right.
So I think I don't know if it's that my humor has evolved or maybe my humor is just very juvenile.
Well, I think though what I see a lot of comics that are autobiographical, and that what kind of keeps me away from them is that I think I've talked about this before, is like pure realism and just pure attempts to like have realism without any kind of whimsical elements just make, I don't know, those worlds aren't as interesting to me. And most of this book by far is very just stripped down. Even using black and white is like a very it just reminds me a lot of kind of 80s and 90s comics, indie comics, that whole thing. And so like based on this book, I enjoyed this, but do I feel like compelled to read his other stuff? Not too much. But what you were saying about his earlier work being not so much about him, that kind of interests me. And also the short story format, which is a little more focused. I'd be curious to see that. But I mean, overall, I feel like to this, I'm a little lukewarm. I enjoyed the parts that were funny, and the parts he just seems to really be based on this, a very tortured person. But that's what he was aiming for, the effect of the book. So I don't know what he's actually like.
For sure. If I were you and you were interested in seeking out more of his stuff, check out the earlier Optic Nerve stuff. Those collections are great. There's one called Killing and Dying, which I believe was the one that he published just before this, which may have been the one that you'd read about 5 years ago that you mentioned, if you'd had read one. That was very good, and it was very dark, but it wasn't at all self-referential, so there was no opportunity for all that self-deprecation, and the stories were really interesting, and the characters are really well developed, and I felt like it wasn't like so much as reading a comic as like watching a really good indie film short. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one thing I was going to show you, like I dug these out when I knew we'd be talking about Adrian today, and this is Optic Nerve #2, and this is one of the books that I collected as soon as I found out who this guy was that had this very captivating style, and I immediately went and collected all his stuff that I could find. This is a reprint, but just so you see, like his style wasn't always as simple as the panels that you'd shown. You can take a look here and see this is very much more detailed in comparison. It's almost as if there's a de-evolution, but I think it works for him, because here's another one. This is not issue #2. This was issue #13 that came out just 8 years ago. And it's got kind of this weird die cut cover. They began publishing them like this. But as you can see now, there's a style more similar to what he's doing now, for sure. And I think both styles work for him. I don't know why the change. It's kind of like, for me, one thing I noticed in looking at artists, and especially looking at sequential art, is you see normally a sort of evolution. Like I remember looking at like that R. Crumb book that you and I have talked about, the one with Mr. Natural. And I noticed that at first, like his characters were drawn with kind of like cartoony fingers where there weren't even fingernails on them. And as the years go by and you see like the stories evolve and his style evolve, it's like, oh, there's all of a sudden there's fingernails and there's more details. There's things that are brought out. And I don't know if that's a stylistic choice or if that's evolution, so it's hard to say. Or maybe it's just, an artist falls into something that they feel comfortable with or works well with what they're going for, what they're trying to get across. Maybe they feel like they can get more across with less. I don't know.
And it could be sometimes they just want to like hit a certain page rate each day or something. And some styles don't allow for, a page a day or 2 pages a day or whatever he's going for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, a lot of these fellas and ladies have like, they've got a quota to meet in terms of in terms
I,
of artwork.
I'm laughing because I saw recently an interview on that Cartoonist kayfabe with Dave Gibbons where they're talking about Watchmen, and when they realized the schedule they were going to be on, he had this graph made of because he was penciling and inking Watchmen, Dave Gibbons, so he had to like put an X through every page that he finished, and it was just this massive graph that he had to do, and he was just like working constantly to finish Watchmen by the schedule that they were on.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Wow. One thing with Watchmen, and I never realized this until somebody pointed it out, is that the cover of each issue of Watchmen is literally the first panel of the comic. Did you know that?
I read that somewhere, yeah, in the annotations or something, and I don't think I realized it until I did look at it.
Yeah, no, the same. So I suppose that was, in a way, I suppose that was like, well, I get one panel done on the cover. Knocks that one right out.
Right. Before I don't really have much more to add about this book, but I did want to, there's a quote on the back from Alan Moore, who has kind of abandoned comics, and he mentions that. He says, "In this heartfelt and beautifully crafted work, Adrian Tomine presents the most honest and insightful portrait you will ever have or ever see of an industry that I can no longer bear to be associated with."
So good.
And
So
I think maybe that's kind of why with this book, like there was kind of like this sense of nausea that I had after reading this that I can kind of understand too, because I went to a few comic conventions when I was younger, and I've been to like book signings and literary events, like talks like that happen in this book, and now all that stuff just seems like horrible, and I would never want to go to any of that stuff. And like comic convention, I don't know if have you ever been to a comic convention? Because like the culture there, I just can't relate to it now, and like it doesn't interest me at all. Like
I'll never forget. I was at one comic and there was an artist sitting at a table, and I had an issue of his book, and I tell you the name of the artist if I could remember, because this isn't insulting to the artist at all, but I don't remember who it was in particular. But there was another fan there, and he handed the guy the book and asked him for an autograph, and the guy looked at it, and the artist looked at it and said, "I had nothing to do with this book. My name is not in here anywhere. I mean, I'll sign it for you."
That was
at all in this.
that was literally in here. Remember, he's in Japan.
I know, yeah, man. I remember that. Like, I remember that moment when I saw that happen in one of the anecdotes in that book. I was like, yeah, that really happens, you know. It was so funny, man. And I think the guy just signed it, just handed it back to him. Thanks.
Use some other signature.
Yeah, man, that was wild.
All right. Well, let's move on. Do you want to talk about Crash Site?
I do. Oh my goodness.
All right. Let's go for it.
All right. This is Nathan Cowdry's. I suppose, is that how you say it? I believe that's how you pronounced it when you talked about it initially.
I have no idea how you say his name. I just said Cowdry because it sounds like dryer of cows.
Cowdry? Well, let's say Nathan Cowdry. So this is Nathan Cowdry's book, Crash Site. Oh my God. And I got this for Christmas from my father, of all people. And this was on this, and my father said, you know, what would you like for Christmas? And I said, you know, I'd really like this book, Nathan Cowdry's Crash Site. And all I thought was like, I know this book is going to be filthy. I hope my father does not look in it.
The perfect Christmas gift.
I don't know. But I saw, Adam, I saw your review of the book, and that's what sold me on it. For one thing, I think you said that he was referred to Fantagraphics, meaning Nathan Cowdry, by Simon Hanselman. And I was like, oh my God, that's my man right there. Or, you know, Simon Hanselman is fantastic, you know? So, and I can see like the parallels. There's so many to the characters and everything. Like the main character, Rosie, has a dog, you know, named Denton. And then in Mega Mog, right? It's Meg, and she has a cat. And I forget what the cat's name is. Do you remember the cat?
Mog.
Oh, it's Mog, of course. Meg and Mog. Yeah, there's Mog, the cat. So yeah, there are a lot of parallels, but it was just, I just loved it, and I laughed out loud so hard. And what a great book, and just so odd too. And one thing I noticed, I don't know if you read this, but on the back there's like, Simon Hanselman does a blurb for the back, and he calls it an entrancing Salonsian nightmare.
Yeah.
Do you know what he's referencing there? Do you know Todd Salons?
Yeah, we briefly mentioned this at
Do
one
we
point.
talk about Todd Solondz? I was like,
I
holy crap, it nails it. It is very Todd Solondzian like, where it's sort of like so dark it's funny, like almost like anti-comedy. You know what I mean? Oh my!
yeah, yeah.
I
um,
don't. I can't imagine this book is for everybody. I think if you were just looking at the surface of it, you'd be like, "What? This is so strange and oddly dark." I think there's a whole segment in there about the Vietnam War. And it's like, what? Do you remember that? Like where the Denton character has like this weird flashback of being in Vietnam with the Rosie character, which obviously didn't happen.
right. I just love that how he strings together all these different incidents that, like the opening pages. It's not even till the end of the book. I'm like, wait a minute, what does that have to, and then I'm like, oh, I put it together, like how he almost like threaded it like in such a way that like initially though, like I had to think about it, like what was that about? And then I'm like, oh, it's much more tightly knit than a lot of books out there.
I really love the fact that the main character is so like beautiful and like charming looking, and she's like the most horrible person.
Right. His art's great though, right? Very simple.
Absolutely, yeah. The art is spectacular. That's the other thing. The art is spectacular. There's like the story is so funny and so like, I mean, there's the humor in here is sometimes just so like gross out, you know. But there was one scene in here that I was like looking at it and I was like, oh my god, like the detail. I'll show you it. Let's see if I can find it. I hate to be flipping through things while we're doing this. I'm not going to show this scene that I tweeted out, but this scene of just like, look at the city here. I mean, look at the work he put into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really incredible the detail put into that and the time it must have taken to do that, you know?
Right. Yeah.
You see, it's great. And a lot of it is just like this beautiful artwork and just like for these hilarious jokes, you know, that I think might just I'd say probably will most definitely offend some people, but it's so great.
Right. I mentioned to you beforehand too that I was looking at some reviews of it, and a lot of people gave it 1-star reviews. Like I think on Goodreads it has like a 3.16 average, and to me that was surprising. But it's just a very I don't know. It's a very provocative book, I think, in that it doesn't hold back, and it just
No, I think it works on those two touchstones or pillars of storytelling. It sex and violence drive the story throughout, like nonstop. It's like even from the very first opening scene with that couple that's getting married on the boat on the river. I don't know if you remember, but they go out into the woods to make love for the first time, and then there's blood all of a sudden everywhere, and it's because this I won't, not to spoil anything, but something has been gutted, you know, completely.
right.
And it's like holy crap, it's like in the very first moment there's sex and violence right there, and it's like, wow, this is so interesting, and so and immediately grabs you, obviously, and it titillates in that way for those reasons, and that doesn't stop throughout the whole book. But there's some moments in there that are just so laugh out loud funny. I don't know if you noticed this too, but there's a lot of references to 90s music, not only like the Counting Crows reference, but on the plane there's a guy in a Korn t-shirt. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember the guy on the plane in the Korn t-shirt.
It's like a small little scene, and he has some lines, and he's talking about how much he loves coffee.
Oh, right, the guy in the next seat. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, the guy in the seat, and he's wearing like a Korn t-shirt just for like, I guess it was just to show like he's kind of an imbecile, you know.
It was
a little bit insulting to the band Korn, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe those are the people that give it 1 star. All the Korn fans.
Maybe it's just Korn fans and Counting Crows fans.
Exactly.
90s rock fans. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that guy. The thing is, I mentioned this before, that's that guy's first book, so we don't really know how fast he is at churning out books. Like Simon Hanselman, he's fast. Like he has another book coming this year. Like I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
He just put out a 320-page book.
Incredible. His Instagram is nonstop too, with the panels constantly, and so yeah, he's obviously, they're a little more raw. I don't know if you followed him on Instagram at all than what he does in the finished volumes, but Yeah, and who knows? Have you checked out any of Nathan Cowdry's other work? Because there's a bunch of other books listed for his. I think they're just like singles or floppies, sort of like an Optic Nerve type deal.
Yeah, I think all I could discover was like mini comics or individual. So I, not stuff you'd have to get it off eBay or a comic shop or something.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested. I liked it enough to seek out his other stuff because I thought it was great. Also love his author photo. Did you notice that?
What was
Is it
that?
okay that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
There's an author photo of Nathan Cowdry.
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember that. You know what? I forgot to mention. I did look on, it was Instagram or Twitter or something, his account, and he was just talking about how, I don't know, people like really get in his face about his work because it's like we said, it's very provocative, and that's kind of just saddens me that he has to deal with stuff like that because it's a fucking book. If they don't want to read it, don't read it. What's the?
Yeah, exactly. And like it's for mature readers. It's not
It's Fantagraphics. What the fuck are they expecting?
graphics. Yeah, I mean it's not for children. I don't understand how. I don't understand taking offense to it. You know what I mean? Like I said, like my dad got me this book, and there's a whole Vietnam section in there. My dad's a Vietnam vet. I don't know how if he would take offense to that scene, that's played out for essentially comedy, right? But yeah, man, who knows?
Yeah.
Who
Well,
knows?
I hope he just stays off social media or whatever and doesn't let the
Yeah,
idiots get to him.
I can imagine if you're that determined and that hardcore, and you've got that kind of sense of humor that he has, where it's like take no prisoners, no holds barred sense of humor. I'm pretty sure that maybe the naysayers and the folks who are deprecating his work, that will just fuel the fire and make him even more vociferous, possibly.
Right. Well, I'm definitely a defender of his work along with Simon Hanselman, and I know they push a lot of buttons for a lot of people, but I don't care. I love their work.
Here either. They make me laugh, both of them. Oh my gosh. And I appreciate what you do, Adam, because otherwise I don't know if I would have sought this out. And I'm enjoying it so much.
Cool.
Good call on the reference. Good call on the referral.
Yeah. Well, if you're ever able to find it too, the other one I recommended a lot last year was City of Belgium, and that one you haven't read that yet, right?
No. Who was that by? Do you recall?
Oh, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name. City of it's I can't remember. He's from Europe, so I don't remember.
Oh,
I don't know. It's just not a name that it comes to mind. Oh, what's his
Adam.
name? Brecht Evans. There we go.
Who is it?
Brecht Evans or Evans,
Okay, cool.
Evens. But yeah, it's not funny in the same way that these books are. But I loved it. I really appreciated it. I don't know if you would or not, but I just think it was amazing. Like, yeah.
I'll give it a shot. There was another one that you were showing me earlier.
Oh yeah. I was going to mention this.
That would look beautiful. I don't know anything about that book.
I didn't know anything about this book either. It's just it was a Fantagraphics book. Pretty much anything Fantagraphics or Drawn and Quarterly releases, I try to at least take a look at the preview and see if it's look like something I might enjoy. And this guy's art, let me show you. So I think this guy does art for the New Yorker. It's very simple. I kind of want to say that both this and Adrian Tomine feel like, in some ways, graphic novels for people that don't read graphic novels, like the people that read the New Yorker. And
I'd say they both have the same lineage in that Tomine started with Drawn and Quarterly and ended up at Fantagraphics and also drew for the New Yorker. So yeah, it sounds like that person is following the same pattern.
Oh, did you know? By the way, this is mainly in like kind of blue and white, but it also has orange. That's like the only color in it. But I wanted to mention, like there's orange there. Did you notice in the Tomine book that there is a little color, like just one use of color in the entire book? Do you remember? I'm trying to remember where it's at. It's red. Maybe that's a hint.
I knew it was red. Was it blood?
Actually, I won't show it because I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, spoil it? Okay, it was blood. But oh shit! Sorry, I lost the image. Okay. But I thought that was funny because do you remember Tomine is at a book signing once and he's right underneath a poster of Frank Miller's Sin City, That Yellow
Yes,
Bastard, which
yes,
is
yes.
to me that was hilarious because
There was, I don't even know if that's referenced like in the dialogue. Is it? It's just like this is where they're placing him, and it's like, yeah, that yellow. And
no,
obviously, you wonder. Obviously, you get the idea of the racism inherent in that.
right,
Sort of like that scene where he goes to visit another friend who's a comic artist who has some other people over, and Tomine is using the guy's computer to scan some work, and one of the other artists doesn't realize Adrian is a comic artist and assumes that he's there to like do computer work for the guy. Do you
right,
remember that?
yeah, exactly.
So
I was mentioning though that
subtlety.
that use of just one color, that was actually, I don't know if you've read That Yellow Bastard, the Frank Miller book, but it does use just one color, yellow, for that character.
Interesting.
So like both of these books, or all three of them, just use a little color here and there. But this book has some interesting like 2-page spreads that are pretty cool that I enjoyed.
That's
Overall
beautiful.
though, yeah, the art's pretty simple. Like it looks almost like Dilbert or something. I don't know. Very simple artwork.
I
Um,
like it. And you like the story a lot?
no, I would say it has the same problem of, like I was talking about, autobiographical realism that I don't like, memoirs that I don't really enjoy as much. Um, it was kind of interesting, but it didn't really grab me because of that. I'm more interested in like fantastic elements like this, but
Very cool.
overall it was just
So
too
you mean
much realism.
there was no anthropomorphic pair of ladies underpants?
Exactly. Why not?
Oh my god, what a great character.
Yeah, it was okay though, but I don't know who I would recommend it to. I guess, we're talking about autobiographical books or comics, and one of the most famous ones of all time is Mouse by Art
Oh
Spiegelman.
yes,
And
of course.
I've never been able to finish Mouse
Me
because
neither.
it just
Same here, Adam.
it doesn't interest me.
No, I got through the first volume. Somebody loaned it to me, and man, it obviously, it hits you. It stuck with me, and I'm sure it did you as well. Um, and then I thought I always like I find the second volume every now and again. And I thought, do I want to read that? I'm like, it's just like it's tough, man. That's a tough story.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, obviously it's a true story, and it's meant to be told like in that way that it's very impactful for sure. But yeah, man, same with me. I never finished it. But I never finished it just because it was so brutal. It was so hard to endure.
Well, I guess people that
But that's the point, I suppose.
people that like realism, that like Mouse, might like this, but it's, like I said, it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
Although I did like some of the art, and I would check out this guy's work again, but I don't feel any great compulsion to read it again or read any more even. But I always worry though that if the artist is watching this for some reason, if they look for themselves, like I don't want to make them feel bad, because I like the art and the storytelling is very good, but it's just not, the subject matter just isn't my thing.
I don't know.
So,
Given what the conversation you and I had earlier, I'd say that any artist being talked about on any program is probably psyched.
wait a minute, what? Oh no, I was thinking of
When we were talking about like, how hard it is to get any kind of attention online, given what some people are doing online.
I just reminded me though of when Tomine was at the convention, and he said, "Oh, there's a review in the Comics Journal," and he like laughs about it. He's like, "Oh, I can't wait to read it." And then he reads it, and it's like he's devastated. He's like crying in bed.
And I guess that was an actual review.
I thought the part with Frank Miller at the Comic-Con, when he's like, "I don't even know how to read this name," and he just doesn't read his name. There was some really funny stuff. I like that. Like I like when he like really pushes into the more ridiculous stuff like that. So
One thing that came through on that is you could tell that Tomine is like just a genuine comics fan, as sophisticated as his work is in comparison to some artists and what they do in the stories that they tell. You can tell that he probably started enjoying comics the same as anybody else did, and loves all the same people and characters the same as anybody else.
Right.
Did you get that feeling at all?
That he loves comics? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even even though he he kind of dishes on Frank Miller because Frank Miller kind of like takes a crap on him at the Comic Con, but um, he still shows like some respect for his work and so on. But I was thinking about we talked about Crumb. I love Crumb's more eccentric stuff, but I don't know if you've read any of the stories that he did with Harvey Pekar.
Yes, I read all those.
Those don't
You didn't
interest
like
me
them?
as much. I
They
mean,
were they. I only read them once, and I thought they were okay. But at that time, it was around the time American Splendor, the film, came out,
hmm,
and I was doing a deep dive into Harvey Pekar, and that collection, the Crumb collection of Harvey Pekar stories, was something that I'd found, and probably at our library. And I read it, and I thought, yeah, this is okay. It was kind of what I expected. I
right.
imagine that there's not the self-deprecation is there again, sort of like what Tomine does in this latest book, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. And I think that's what I'm trying to say though, is like I love Crumb, his art, no matter what, but I love his stories when like I don't know if you've ever read his stories like the characters with the magic carpet where they fly to the other planet. Like, I forget the name.
no,
Oh, that one's great. Like in the 60s, he was just doing such eccentric stuff and Fritz the Cat, Mr. Natural, like the more ridiculous it got, the more I loved it. And when he stopped doing drugs at some point and he just became more he's still a wonderful artist. I love his art no matter what, but his storytelling to me peaked in the 60s and early 70s. Yeah.
I love the Mr. Natural stuff. That's but I will check out the Magic Carpet stuff for sure. Are you Adam, I don't know if you've ever talked about this fellow. I know that you and I have never talked about this fellow, but Moebius or Moebius as are you a fan of Moebius?
Mobius, I think it's Mobius.
Mo-
Yeah, yeah. I talked about the Inkall at something recently. Do you know the Inkall?
oh, no, but I think I remember watching you talk about that.
That's the one that he didn't write. He did the art with
Right.
Jodorowsky, but
You're right, right. That's
yeah.
I think that was my first introduction to Moebius because Jodorowsky was talking about him.
Is that how you say his name, Jodorowsky? I probably am
Yeah,
saying
I
it wrong.
prefer to pronounce Jodorowsky or yeah, and then I think maybe I'm pronouncing Moebius's name as Moebius because I think Jodorowsky pronounced it like that, but who
No,
knows? That was right
yeah.
or wrong.
My first experience with Mobius was the Blueberry comics, and I love the art on that. I don't know if you've seen those. They're
No,
they're westerns, not sci-fi or anything fantasy at all. So it's very different. But you can tell that even then he was doing that was like some of his earliest work, and he was. I think they had him working like kind of like Watchmen. Like he had a schedule and he had to check off, and he's just cranked out the pages. He did like I want to say he did like thousands of pages of art for that, but I don't know. I'd love to read more of that. Yeah,
his work is also very distinctive. You know it as soon as you see it.
yeah, absolutely. All right,
Yeah, it's good stuff.
cool. Well, I think I've hit all the comic stuff that I wanted to talk about. I'm always doing comic reviews though, so if you ever want to talk comics again, just let me know. And
Oh,
either way, I'm
I,
going to talk about them.
I think it's hard to find folks that are interested in these more underground. I say underground, but I imagine like probably I don't know how would you put it. More cerebral, I suppose, comics than just like the what's or mainstream against more under. I use the term underground. I don't know if that's correct in terms of what these are, but yeah, it's hard for me to find folks that are as interested in these as someone like yourself. So I enjoy talking about them with you.
Well, sometimes I do try kind of mainstream stuff. I have a book I reserved at the library from this. Do you know this sci-fi author? I want to say her name is N.K. Jemisin. Is that?
No, I'm not familiar.
I mean, I was just kind of looking for contemporary science fiction authors, and her name came up as one of the most recent, well received. So I found out she did a comic though, and it's kind of somehow in the DC universe, but it's like at the edge of it. So I thought it'd be an interesting way to try her work, a little lighter read than a novel, because I just don't have time for novels, I guess, but I do read them sometimes. But I am going to try her graphic novel first and see how that is, and that's kind of mainstream, so I'm not against it. It's just I tend to kind of gravitate towards more offbeat stuff.
That's what I enjoyed. This is speaking of more mainstream. This a fellow I work with recommended this to me. This is Echo Lands. Have you heard about this one?
Oh yeah, I love his art. I haven't read that though.
J.H. Williams III, who did the only thing I knew him from was Sandman Overture, but I think he did Batwoman also. And I started collecting this one on the recommendation of a work colleague, and the work is beautiful,
Right.
and the story is very simple. But also the landscape style on like a monthly book is kind of unique, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it's so far it's very good. I haven't caught up with all of them, but I've read the first three and I enjoyed them enough to keep going.
Yeah. I think I saw that and I kind of wanted to wait for a collected edition because I want to say, isn't it just like 16 pages each one because it's that wide format?
You know what? It's not. It's definitely more than that.
Okay.
Shoot, but I did see in looking and researching it recently, you know what, maybe it is because there's a lot of extras in the back. There's a whole like and this is one thing I noticed in the first three issues is that the artists and the creators put their like playlist, like all the music they were listening to while they were creating the comic, which is really interesting, as well as letters. There's like a letters page too. So yeah, there's a lot of extra material. So yeah, perhaps it is a smaller story. Maybe I just didn't recognize that it was, but in researching it, yeah, I saw that the first volume is being collected and put out soon. So yeah, maybe check that out when it comes out. It's okay. Like I said, the story is very simple and easy to follow, but the artwork is spectacular, and that's kind of, you know, the more appealing part of it, I suppose.
Cool. Yeah, I do want to read that at some point. Cool.
Yeah, and not necessarily mainstream. I mean, Image. I suppose Image is like almost mainstream at this point, right? It's up there. I mean, Spawn. Shoot, what's the other one? The big one, The Walking Dead, right? So
oh yeah,
yeah.
They kind of drifted away though from superheroes. Like that was their main thing in the 90s. They were superhero comics, and then they started branching out, which I'm glad. I'm always glad that when publishers do other stuff besides superheroes. So
for sure, yeah, you're right. It was like monsters and like monster superheroes. It was like Max and Pit. I remember the big ones. Then there was like tough guys like Death Blow and stuff. Yeah, in the 90s they had that. That was a lot of what Image did. But you're right. Now they don't seem to be afraid to take a chance and put out like a 4-story, book of, like a noir story or something like that. Something completely different. Even if it doesn't do incredibly well sales wise, it's cool. Kind of refreshing that somebody's doing that.
Yeah, it is. I'm glad they are. Cool. Well, I think we can call it a wrap. Why don't we tell people before we go, where can they find you online?
Oh, thanks, Adam. Yeah, well, you can find me on social media. I'm at Andy Mascola. All my books are available on Amazon. I've written 9 novels, and you can now find them on Google Play. I recently put them up in ebook format on Google Play, so if you use that. And yeah, and I've got a podcast called People Are the Enemy. It's I try to be funny. Adam was just telling me he was catching up on it. It made me laugh to hear that there's somebody reflecting back on what I've put out there. But yeah, check those things out. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
Awesome. It's the only podcast I follow, people, so check it out.
Oh, awesome. That's a great recommendation. And Adam's been on the podcast, so if you love Adam, as I do, check it out. And I'll surely be back.
Go sifting through the episodes until you find mine. I don't remember what numbers they are. But
I couldn't tell you. I'm up into the 200s now. I put it out every week.
Yeah, every Sunday usually, isn't it, or Monday?
It was Sunday for a while, yeah, and then I because my work schedule, but it's gone back to Monday evenings, which is like the worst time to put out a podcast episode. It seems like nobody is online when I try to promote it, but it does get listenership. I think folks, tend to download their podcasts on a Monday and then listen throughout the week, or so it seems. So,
well, yeah. Just remember
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If you get a podcast out on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, it's probably the best 3 days of the week to put it out. Awesome.
Well, check it out, people. People are the enemy. And I think with that, we'll call it a day. And thanks again, Andy, for showing up on the show. And we'll probably do it again.
Always a pleasure, Adam. Thank you so much for having me. You're the best, buddy.
All right. Bye-bye.
Adios.